Hey everyone, welcome to the Palikari Business Podcast. My name is Abby.
And I'm Nick.
And we're the founders of Odyssey Productions Co., a video production company located in the Central Valley of California.
Yeah, the word Palikari is a Greek word that means a young person who's achieved great things beyond their years.
So in each episode of this podcast, we will be interviewing successful business owners, influencers, and entrepreneurs to learn from their wisdom, experiences, and even their mistakes in hopes of helping you achieve great things beyond your years.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the episode.
On this episode, we interview Mark Hammond. He's been involved with several different businesses over the years. He's been in real estate for over 20 years, and he has grown a church in 4 years from 125 people to 650.
Yeah, so in this episode, we cover a lot of topics on leadership. One of them specifically is how to be a leader that people want to follow. We also cover some networking things and just how to build a good team to support you and to grow with you.
This episode is super good, encouraging, and fun to listen to, so we hope you enjoy it. So can you share just a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes. So I am married. I have 4 children, and I'm 54 years old. And my background is, actually, I got a job on my 16th birthday, like everybody else, but I got a job at Burger King. And it was awesome for about the first 10 minutes, and then it was horrible. But then I discovered that it would be less horrible if I became maybe a supervisor. So I, about 3 weeks in, became a supervisor, and fast forward 7 years later, I was a district manager at Burger King, and I just never left. So I discovered kind of what management was, and didn't go to college at that point. Just a class here and there, but I really discovered what business was and profit and losses were and how to effectively run one. From there, I just went into another business, built it, another business, built it, and then finally decided if I'm building somebody else's business, I might as well start to try to build my business, which took a risk, not coming from the world of business at all. In fact, my parents worked at Hershey's. So they were not involved in business. They were involved in production. So that's kind of the beginning of my journey in business.
Yeah, that's awesome. We've been in the similar place too, where working for other people, and we're just like, we're spending all this energy, but we're not growing ourselves from this. We're growing someone else. So why not turn it into one of our own things? So yeah, I totally can agree with that. Yeah, and follow that. So you're in a place of leadership right now. You have a church and a good following and a lot of people under you that love you. So the question I have for you is, how do you be a leader that people want to follow? Because a lot of people have bosses, and I would say most of the time I hear about bosses, it's always with a negative side to it.
Well, I think that we're talking about two different things. I think there's a manager and I think there's a leader. And I don't want to be a manager. Managing somebody means that I'm micromanaging them. I'm worrying about everything that they do. I believe that a leader doesn't have to say they're a leader. They don't have to have a title. They don't have to have a position. A leader simply just goes about their life, and when they turn around, they notice that people are following them. So I think that really a leader serves his people. A manager tells his people what to do. I shouldn't have to tell my people what to do. They should want to come alongside of me, because my vision is big enough that they want a piece of that.
Yeah,
that's really good.
That is really good. You lead a lot of people. How do you lead yourself? Like, how do you, what is it about yourself that would make people want to follow you then?
Well, I think that a good leader is a good student, and a good leader is a good team player. So I've always thought it was important for me to have a coach.
Okay.
So I don't try to figure it out myself. I believe this. Everyone around me knows that I preach this, I say it, I teach it. Those that are behind you will criticize you. Those that are alongside of you will encourage you. Those that are ahead of you will change you. And if I'm trying to be a leader and my ego is so big that I don't have anybody in front of me that's going to change me, then I'm not much of a leader. So I've always had a strong coach, and I've had to go look for them sometimes, but I've had a business coach. I have a coach as far as being a pastor. I have a coach as far as being a real estate agent. So I've always kind of had a coach.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does, totally. I have a question for you then. How do you find coaches?
That's not that easy. Honestly, I believe that in my world, I can't speak for others, but in my world, I don't have a bunch of people speaking into my life. I have a couple of people speaking into my life in each one of them. So I guess it just depends. In the church world, I was looking about 5 years ago, we were pastoring about 125 people on a Sunday morning, leading a team of, let's say 10 to 15 volunteers, something like that. That was 4.5 years ago. And so I had to find somebody that had already been where I wanted to go. So we started searching out, and we found somebody who had grown a church from 80 people to 1,400 people. My wife and I, Nicole, we knew that we knew that we believed in our vision. Our goal was to have a church of over 1,000 people. That just seemed like a good, comfortable number for us, which sounded really crazy compared to 100 people. Yeah. So we had to find somebody. I wasn't going to find somebody who had pastored a church of 200 people. There's nothing wrong with that. I hadn't arrived at that either. But instead, I wanted to find somebody who they had arrived at something that was almost seemed unattainable to me. So that's what we've done in business as well. We found the most successful person in the room. We've served them until finally, just kind of by default, by natural occurrences, they became our coach. I've never paid a coach. Yeah. I've never signed up for it. Nothing wrong with that. I personally have just never paid somebody to coach me. I've served them while they coach me.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. I like what you said about finding the more successful one in the room, because a lot of people will ask advice for someone how to get somewhere that they have never been, So you always want to ask the person that's where you want to go, how to get there.
I think if I could just say one other thing into that, we've always, and I've always made sure that I wasn't insecure in who I was, and I'm not trying to become them. I'm trying to become a better me by following them as they become a better them. So I'm not insecure. Right now, I'm in good relationships with people who have very large churches in our city. And some might say, aren't you intimidated? I'm not intimidated, because that's where they're called to, and this is where I'm called to. Yeah. But I will watch them and pattern myself after them the best that I possibly can. I think insecurity is a big, big, big fault in leadership. And people miss out on what could be through a coach because they're insecure of the coaches in front of them.
Yeah.
That's really good.
It is good.
And kind of going off of that, obviously as a leader, you have the vision of where you want to go and where you want to get to, but there are always going to be like negative Nancy's in the background telling you why you can't do it. How do you deal with people like that?
I don't listen. Let me see. Haters are going to hate. I don't listen to them. I have an open mind. I'm willing to see if what they're actually saying is relevant in my life. But if it's not relevant in my life, and if I don't want what they have, then I'm not going to listen to them. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that their opinion doesn't get to rent any space in my world, because I really am on a vision. I figured that we only have this much life to live. And if you only have this much life to live, I'm not going to spend any moments listening to somebody tell me what I'm doing wrong unless they're my coach. Yeah. That's really the truth.
That's good.
So how do you lead through ups and downs, like through tough times? How do you keep leading even if...
Especially when it's unknown too, like when COVID happened, that was a huge unknown of how do you lead a church through that?
It was difficult. It was difficult. So I think the first thing you do is just understand, I don't got this. I've never done this before. I think the second thing is you look outside. I have to look outside. I tend to personalize things, and so I have to depersonalize them, if that's a word. I have to look outside and think I'm not the only one that's going through this. So that's what you do. I also personally ask myself, what's the worst thing that could happen? So if I look at worst case scenarios, when COVID hit, we're building the church, what's the worst thing that could happen? When I looked at that, then I already had that out there. So when I got to that worst thing that could happen, I had kind of already played it out in my mind. I prepared myself for it so it didn't take me out at the knees. So I think that's it, is you just, sometimes it's like flying a plane as you build it. But you just take some time. I have to take some personal time. I have to ask myself, Mark, are you taking enough time for yourself? Sometimes I have to read a book. Right now we're in a different place in in the church world, in the business world than we've ever been in. We've moved into a new facility. We're growing. We're averaging a decent amount of people, about 650 on a Sunday, somewhere around there. And so we've gone from 125 to 650 in a 4-year period, and in the middle of that was COVID, where we were shut down and opening. Are you supposed to open? Do you open? Do you not open? Mask, no mask, singing, no singing. You have to answer all those questions. But here we are now, and we're building coming out of that. Where do you go? How do you go? So we just make sure that we take some time. And for me, just recently, I started a new book study with about 12 men, because the best way for me to gain insight on myself is to teach other men. So I had read the book. Is it okay if I reference the book? Crazy Faith by Michael Todd. It just makes sense. It's kind of easy reading, but there's a lot of stuff in there. So for me, I'm going back through the book again. I've read it probably 3 times, but going back through it again and discovering what faith is, and discovering what fear is, and discovering what risk is again, and asking myself, are you willing to take some more risk? It'd be easy for us to say, we've arrived. We've moved from one location that we were at for 83 years with a small congregation to a medium size. We've arrived. We're on McHenry in our city. That's a pretty main street, but we haven't arrived. This is just a launching pad. So I've got to get my faith back in order. So I read, I study. Monday, I took a day off, literally just took the day off with a blanket and a recliner and just watched useless TV. I did not put any information in my mind. I didn't try to learn that day. I just rested a little bit and cleaned a little bit of dog poop because it had to be cleaned. But that's it. So that's it. I think it's soul care. We're talking soul care.
Okay.
That's good.
That is good. So I have kind of a different question. We're talking about rest, or the opposite.
I'm horrible at it.
Or the opposite of rest. Yes, I know. That's why I was going to ask the other side to it. Is from the outside looking at you, it seems like there's never any slowdown. It seems like that you always got something going on. You're always hustling in some way. So how do you manage your time and keep up the energy to?
Well, first of all, I manage my time with my wife. That's the most important. So Nicole gets priority as far as that goes. So we manage our time with our calendars, and we merge calendars. She doesn't need to know where I am. I don't need to know where she is at all times. But when there is an appointment, when there's something going on, we kind of manage it through, fortunately, we have Google Calendar. We also have an assistant that helps us manage it. For me, I don't know. Everybody has a different level of rest. Rest isn't restful for me. I can't explain that, but for some people, just unplugging is the best thing ever. Monday, when I unplugged, it was painful. It was painful. I felt like I had lost a whole day. I had some fear of loss. Things are going out there. FOMO was happening. I could be doing this or that, but I knew that there was I actually had a little bit of a bug that was trying to get at me physically. So I knew if I didn't take a day to rest, it was going to be crucial. So to me, I don't know. Rest is, I guess it just depends. If you love what you do, then why do you need to take time off from it? I guess that's how I am with our lives, with the church and with business. I'm still bivocational, but not as much on both of them as I used to be. I've been doing real estate for so long, for about 20 years or so. So it kind of comes naturally. So I'm able to build a church, do real estate. My clients are really good to me. And then with that, I've also built a team around that. So I believe that leverage is huge for me being able to accomplish what it is that I accomplish.
Okay. And how do you get that leverage then?
I look around at my surroundings and I say, I cannot do this alone. I don't believe that there's a self-made millionaire everywhere. I don't believe that there's a self-made man. A self-made man always comes with a team. Leverage makes sense. It's better for me to have 10 men trying to do one job than me trying to do 10 men's job. So I always find somebody that can do the stuff that I don't like to do. I don't like to dot the I's and cross the T's. I don't like to deal in files. I don't like to deal with paperwork. It's a miserable day for me to have to sit with a laptop on my lap all day long dealing with paperwork and that kind of stuff. But it's an amazing time for my assistant Denise to do that. She loves that. She thrives in it. Nicole, my wife, can sit for 10 hours with a laptop just researching and with concordances everywhere. I don't do well with that.
Yeah.
I do better up and moving. I'm not the guy that wants to sit at a desk. I'm the guy that wants to stand at a desk at the most.
Yeah.
We also want to move into getting people for help, and just we need help, to be able to scale our business. So how do you find those people, and how do you
build a good team?
Build a good team, because it's scary picking people out to help you.
It is. It's difficult, especially in some of the stuff that I do is all the stuff that I do, whether it's real estate or the church, is dealing with people's lives. So I think that's number one, is you have to have good character. They have to have good character. They have to have work ethic. You can't teach work ethic. I can teach a lot of things, but I cannot teach somebody work ethic. If they're lazy, they're just lazy. I don't know. I can't. I mean, you can fix it a little bit, but honestly, you can't teach it. I want somebody who's coachable to me. I don't want somebody who's going to question everything that I say. I'm not looking to be a dictator, but if it's coming from my vision. I learned many years ago, one of my mentors, her name was Adine Garcia, and her husband, Ray, was my senior pastor when I was growing up. But in my early 20s, she said this: anything with more than one head is a monster. And that made a lot of sense to me. It simply meant that somebody has to take the lead. So if I take the lead, then those that are working with me know that I'm the leader. They're comfortable with that, and I'm comfortable with that. If they're not comfortable with me leading them, then they're not the right person to be assisting me in that. They can go do their own thing someplace, and I'll cheer them on, champion them on that. But I have to have somebody who's okay with me being the lead and just following my lead.
Yeah.
So this one, if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to.
Okay.
But as a leader, what are some of the biggest mistakes you've made, and how did you overcome those, or what did you learn from them?
Oh, 100%. I don't mind answering that. Okay. One of the biggest mistakes that I've made is loving too hard. I am super relational by nature. And if I meet somebody, I want them to be with me the rest of their lives. I'm super loyal, and I expect everyone else to be super loyal. So I think one of the biggest mistakes that that I've made is in just sticking with those that are the closest, nearest to me, and not the new people. So I discovered years ago, many years, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I discovered a concept, and it's called taprooting. And it simply says that if I'm here and I've got my leadership here, but a new person comes in, then I will go down, I will bypass all of my leaders, and I will go down and I will meet that person. When you meet them and they're down here, and you just kind of tap them and you build a relationship with them, by default it encourages those that are above to go and do the same thing. So, but I do that intentionally so I don't get stuck just with my people that I feel comfortable with, because after a while, the people that you feel comfortable with, they won't critique you right. They will critique you from a place of honor, but they won't necessarily critique you from a place of total honesty, because they know how you're going to react to the honesty. And I haven't always reacted correctly to the honesty of a critique. So I think that's it. I remember. I don't know why my mind just went way back. I'm talking way back to my days of Burger King. I was 17 years old, and I was getting ready to turn 18 years old, and they gave me my first restaurant, meaning that I was the head manager of this restaurant. They moved me up to Sonora, and I remember that I had to transition in my mind from being a peer to being a leader, and it was a difficult transition. Because everybody knew me as being a young kid, and I was going up to manage. So I think that one of the biggest mistakes that I made at the beginning was to go in and think that everyone is going to like me because I liked them and because I was super excited. But they were 60 years old, and they weren't super excited to have an 18-year-old young guy be their manager. So then, when you get into that kind of a place, in leadership, everyone's not going to like you. They're just not. And I would be lying if I said I don't care what other people think about me. I believe that the average person does care what other people think about them. And if they don't, they should. I do care what other people think about me if I'm going to lead, because I want them to follow me without me having to tell them what to do. At that moment where I was transitioning in my mind was I was hired to be a manager, but what I was really feeling is a draw to be a leader. I wanted them to follow me because I was leading, simply because, or not because I was a manager and I was pointing at them saying, do this and this and this. So the mistake was I anticipated it being beautiful. The learning curve was I had to say, I'm the manager, and if you don't like it, I totally understand. I'm not mad at you, but you just can't be here with me. So I think that that's a big mistake, is maybe keeping people a little bit too long. I learned in leadership also many years ago, there was this, in management, I would be an upper management, and another manager would, they called it, well, this is what would happen is they would say, you know what, I forget it. And they would have their keys in their hand to the restaurant or the business or the truck. I was a route driver or whatever. And they would say, they throw me their keys and say, forget it, I quit. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made was trying to talk them into taking the keys back. I learned that if they throw you their keys, just take them. It's okay. You're going to survive it. It's not going to be easy. I may have had to have worked double, but in the long run, once they hand you their keys and they throw them at you, they quit at that moment. No matter whatever it is in leadership. I mean, obviously this is just an illustration, but whatever it is, if somebody says, I don't want to follow you anymore, they don't want to follow you anymore. Even if you talk them into following you, you're not going to lead them. So just let them go. And with the taprooting, then you've met somebody and you bring them up to that place of leadership, if that makes sense.
That's really good.
That's a really long answer. So.
That's really good, though. Yeah.
So you have a really big network. How do you start from nothing to building connections?
I think it's in having a coach and watching how they've built a network. So for me, again, I have a few people that have spoken into my life. I watched my dad, who was not a businessman, who was not even, he wouldn't even call himself a leader as far as that goes, but I watched him naturally have the gift of hospitality. And so I believe that if you have to work at building a network, something is wrong. You need to take a better look at who you are. If you don't have influence, well, you could also be reading John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of a Leader. The law of attraction exists in building a network. But my dad just always had influence. He always had a network around him. He could have been a great leader if he would have chosen. He didn't want to be a great leader. But he could have been, well, he was like a silent leader, but he was never a leader as far as in business goes. But I watched them build this network of people. Everywhere we went, dad and mom knew people, or people knew them. But they knew them because of their character, and they knew them because of their hospitality. So that's all we've done. Nicole and I have always just tried to be hospitable, have always tried to serve people, and just be kind. The worst thing that you can do when trying to build a network is let them know that you're trying to build a network. We've had people that we have been leading in other type of businesses where you need to build a team as fast as you can, a sales force, if you will, and people will go and try to recruit people. But if somebody knows you're trying to recruit them, then you've messed up. You have to spend some more time just being kind, hospitable, serving them, and then naturally they'll come to you.
That's good. So it's really about focusing on relationship, not I need people to sell to or something.
It's the worst because they can smell you. They can see you coming. If you walk into a room and people walk the other way, you need to spend some more time building some relationships without them thinking that you want something from them. John Maxwell's, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so that's really what it is. I think that when we've built teams of people, I remember many years ago in 2007, one of our business coaches, her name is Jennifer Dowd, she said, I need you to get some people in the living room, and I need you to get a lot of people. Well, a lot of people to her meant 5 to 7 people, but she didn't tell us that. So she didn't have a lid or a limit on us, another law of John Maxwell. And so for us, we had about 100 people at that meeting, and she couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. They were like, where did all these people come from? I said, well, you asked us to get a big meeting. So I think also is just recognizing that different people have different levels of influence, and some are built just to have smaller levels of influence. And it doesn't mean that they're broken. Doesn't mean it's wrong. You can't put something into somebody that God's left out. For us, we just enjoy being around a lot of people. For some others, they enjoy being around a small amount of people. So wherever you excel in, then that's your level of that's your level of leadership. And if it's only 2 or 3 people, then be really good to those 2 or 3 people. But ask those 2 or 3 people who's in your network. So it would simply say, I like you, but I love your people. So who are your people?
Yeah.
Oh, I like them. I like you, but who do you know? And that's really what we do. Even in building the church is who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? So it's kind of a question that we keep in our brain always is who do you know? And you go through the people, not to use them, but they may know somebody who's looking to be a part of something greater than themselves.
That's really good.
That is really good. And there's a lot of truth to what you're saying earlier, too, about how they can smell you. Because we've gone to a lot of meetings that are mixers and stuff that are specifically for networking. And that is where the least amount of networking happens. Because no one there wants what you have to sell. They're all there for their own benefit. No one, they're not there to make relationships unless the mixer is just like for you to be learning alongside people. Then it's sometimes okay, but if it's there specifically to try to sell to each other, it's just
and I also, if I could just speak into, so I've also said there's no shame in the game, meaning that if in one of those settings, people try to be cool, they try to be vague, that just say it. It is what it is. Like I will say, even for church, if I'm looking for somebody to do something within a volunteer, I'm looking for a volunteer. I don't go to them and try to talk around it. I say, hi, I'm here to recruit you. So let's just get that out of the way. And then I talk to them. So you can bring a little humor into it, but honestly, it takes the elephant out of the room. Just say it. It is what it is. Yeah. You're there to recruit them. Or I'm looking to, in real estate, yes, I'm here to tell you about the value of your home, but ultimately, I want to list your home. Ultimately, I want to be your realtor. Oh, and I want to be your cousin's realtors, your sister's realtors, and your mom and dad's realtor. Just say it and take it out. I think that then they go, and then they'll come alongside of you.
Yeah.
That's good. So then this one is more, I guess, a faith-based question, but how do you integrate your faith and like your values into your business or into your leadership or whatever it is that you're doing?
I think that most of the time, most of the leadership books that you will read are all based on the Bible. They are. So I don't believe that I have to walk through life explaining the addresses on where to find the scriptures in the Bible. But loving my neighbor, I don't have to say, oh, scripture says love thy neighbor as thyself. Yeah. I don't have to say that. But hey, I see you're my neighbor. And you may not even like me, but I'm going to give you a pumpkin pie because I'm going to love you. Yeah. So ultimately, I think that just, the faith is the core of who you are, and the word I have hidden in my heart. It says that I might not sin against thee, but ultimately, if I have the word of God in my heart, those are the principles. That's the instructions. People say they don't have instructions for leadership. You're wrong. I believe that Jesus said, hey, to 12 people and told those 12 people to go out and do it and multiply, and here we are. So he was a business leader, wasn't he? A business leader. Moses led, Abraham led. We're talking about, Paul, Timothy, Matthew, Mark, Luke. They were all leaders. So just find one of those leaders, and I mean, they're throughout the scripture. So my faith is attached to stories in the Bible. Those are some of my coaches. I just have never had a chance to meet them yet.
Yeah. You have started a lot of businesses and taken a lot of first steps. And for most people, that is like the hardest step to take is the first one. So I would just ask if you have any tips on actually making that first step and getting into just starting, basically.
Number one, you've got to get up. My dad said, again, my dad was one of my people who were ahead of me that changed me, but he was never a leader in business, but he was a leader in life to me. And my dad said some things that were profound, and they sound so silly, but he would say, people die in bed. Yeah. Meaning get up. Like not many people die while they're up doing something. While they're up, they lay down and they go to sleep. And so then the first thing you got to do is just get up. Get up. If you want something different, then do something different. If you want something different, then find somebody who has what you have. So I've never started a business on my own. I've always followed some type of a system, and then I've made it into I've made it personal with me. But I've never had an idea and started it without finding somebody else who had a like an idea with some type of a likeness to it.
Yeah.
So there's always a model. There's a model out there for almost everything you do. And then there's first steps, there's next step, there's general practices that really go along with every single business that I've ever built. I enjoy building teams. So if I'm never going to start a business where it's just me. I'm just not that, because I don't enjoy that. So that's not going to motivate me. It's not going to make me get up in the morning. I enjoy network. I enjoy influence. I enjoy meeting people with influence, but it all comes down to enjoying teams. Yeah. So I'm going to attach myself to something that I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
That's good.
I like that you come alongside people too, because that makes it so much easier on, like, the risk is still there, but it feels like so much less because you at least have seen it work. You're not just stepping out blindly.
I've seen it work and I've seen it fail.
Yeah.
And that's okay too, because they were one no closer to a yes. So team is, I would never want to do it alone. I'm just not good doing it alone. I don't believe that we are created to do life alone. If so, then we wouldn't be here. Adam would be hanging out in the garden.
True. That's a good point.
So just since you mentioned it, what have you learned from failures in business or projects you've started or teams you've started in the past?
I've learned that I can't rely on people more than... There was one instance that we were building a team and our leaders got busy building another team, and I felt I had resentment towards them because I felt like they had left us. They had abandoned us. And it wasn't their fault, but I just felt this thing. And I discovered, just in a time of prayer and complaining and whining and maybe crying on the inside. I don't think they were actually physical tears, but just whining, just kind of throwing a silent fit. I believe that I know the Lord reminded me that they weren't my Savior, that He's my Savior and He's my source. And so ultimately, I think that although I want to coach and I want leaders and I want influence, they're not going to save me. That's not their job. Their job is to prepare the way for me. Their job is to show me, to direct me, to influence me. But their job is not to make me successful. That's between me and my God.
So what is the biggest lesson that you've learned in your journey so far?
I think the best lesson I've ever learned in life is it's not what it appears. It's not as though it appears in front of you. In my life, not to go into details, but in my life, I've been going along and then just been taken out at the knees. Whether it, 24 years ago, not to go into details, but I became a widow with 2 small children, and I was not expecting it. It was not in the plan, but life took me out at the knees. And so I think that what I learned at that time is you've got to breathe. You don't suck it up. Just breathe for a second. Take it in and say, okay, but do I still trust God and do I still trust the process? So I think that that's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned is life is never going to be what you think it's going to be, but you're along for the journey, and eventually we all die and hopefully we go to heaven. In the middle of it, how much of a difference did you truly make? I think that is one of the big lessons. And then I believe that there are absolutes and there are non-absolutes. And if something is an absolute, I can't fix it. I can't do anything about it. It's just the way that the journey is, whether it's something that I did and I made an error or God put in front of me because He had a different direction for me. An absolute is an absolute, meaning this. I would absolutely love to be 6 foot tall, but I'm 5'10". And no matter if I buy those shoes on Facebook that say that I'm going to grow by 2 inches, when I take them off, I'm still 5'10". It's an absolute. In my world, I believe that there are some things that as leaders and as just as human beings, there's some absolutes. I absolutely can't do anything about this. I don't focus on those. Those are just, I can't fix that. I can't change that. That's just not who I am. I would love to have Nikki's hair, but I don't have Nick's hair because mine is gray and it's falling out. That's an absolute. So I'm not going to spend any time trying to correct that or worry about that or staying in bed grieving over that. It's an absolute. But there are some things in my life that I can change that are not absolutes. That's what I think as leaders, that's what I think as human beings, we need to walk towards those absolutes and really focus in on those versus the others. I think that one of the other biggest lessons that I've learned is it's not a failure when something ends. It just means that it's the beginning of something else.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the, I beat myself up when I fail at something, and it's really ultimately, I'm just one failure closer to another success. And it's an open door and a closed door. And I believe that when one door is open, God turns the lights out on the other. I've tried to go back in because it was more comfortable, but it's dark.
Yeah.
So just walk into the light and just see what's ahead of you.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you learned just as much as we did on this episode of the Palikari Business Podcast.
Yeah, for more information on our guests, make sure to check out the podcast description on whatever platform you're listening on.
Yeah, and if you'd like to connect with us and continue the discussion, you can always join our Palikari Community Discord and follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Just search for us under the handle @Odyssey Productions Co. for new podcast clips in your feed every week.
Until then, we'll see you next time.